Have you ever been there? You're going about your day, confidently holding on to a belief you've had for years. Maybe it's about, I don't know, how a new technology works, or a historical event, maybe even a personal conviction.
Uh-huh.
Then suddenly, bam, a new piece of information appears. It's undeniable, it's compelling, and it directly challenges everything you thought you knew. What happens in that moment?
Yeah, what do you do?
Do you instantly pivot, changing your mind on the spot, or do you feel that subtle, often unconscious tug pulling you back to your old perspective, making you instinctively cling to what you already believe?
It's a universal experience, isn't it? And it highlights just how incredibly complex the human process of, well, updating our knowledge really is. It's almost never a simple, immediate click and update.
Exactly, and that intricate, often counterintuitive dance of updating our knowledge and opinions is precisely what we're diving into today. This deep dive is all about belief revision, a concept that, reaches across so many different fields.
It really does, from AI algorithms.
Right, to the deepest corners of human psychology. Our mission today is to unpack the fascinating mechanics of how we actually change our minds, why we sometimes resist, and what truly constitutes rational belief revision across all these different contexts.
And we'll be exploring a range of different models and observed behaviors, including some really powerful ideas like bounded revision and the pervasive, sometimes stubborn tendency we call conservatism.
Where are we drawing this from? What are the sources?
Well, our sources today come from pretty diverse fields, from formal epistemology, which is basically the philosophical study of how we know what we know,
Okay.
to cognitive psychology and the cutting edge of artificial intelligence. This really underscores just how fundamental and interdisciplinary this process is, whether we're talking about a human brain grappling with a new idea or a sophisticated computer system trying to update its knowledge base.
So let's begin our journey by looking at the more structured, maybe almost mathematical side of things. When we talk about belief revision in a formal, logical sense, how do we define this core idea?
At its heart, belief revision is the process of dynamically changing an agent's belief state, which you can think of as their entire collection of current understandings and opinions in response to new information.
Okay, dynamic change.
But here's the crucial part. It's much more complex than just adding new facts to a list. Oftentimes, accepting new information means you have to remove old, conflicting beliefs to maintain consistency.
Ah, right, to make everything fit together.
Exactly. It's like a constant negotiation within your own mind or within an AI's knowledge base to make sure everything still makes sense together.
So it's not just an additive process, which makes perfect sense. And this is where the AGM approach comes in, offering a foundational framework with three fundamental operations, formalized through what they call postulates. Can you walk us through those? Maybe skip some of the heavy formal logic.
Absolutely. The AGM postulates, named after Alcaron, Gardenfors, and Mackinson, define three distinct ways a belief set can change. The first is expansion, often thought of as K plus R.
K plus alpha. Got it.
This is the simplest. You take your current belief state K, and you simply add a new piece of information, I, to it. Then you logically infer all the new consequences that arise from this addition.
So just accept it, no questions asked.
Pretty much. It's about accepting the new information without really questioning anything you already believe. The big challenge here is, if your new information contradicts an old belief, expansion will simply lead to an inconsistent belief state.
Right. An inconsistency is bad in logic, isn't it?
It's a disaster. In formal logic, an inconsistent system is a mess. You can logically derive anything from it, which makes your beliefs utterly useless.
That sounds like a recipe for intellectual chaos if you're trying to build any kind of coherent knowledge system, whether it's in your head or in a computer.
Precisely. Which brings us to the second operation, contraction, K. L.
K minus alpha. Or dot minus.
Dot minus, yeah. This is all about removing a belief from your belief state. But it's not just I that has to go. Any other beliefs that logically depend on I or whose justification relied on I also need to be removed to maintain consistency.
Okay, so it's like pruning a tree. If you cut a branch, the leaves on that branch go too.
That's a good analogy. If you believed my car is a Ferrari and my car is red, and you learn your car isn't a Ferrari, you might then have to reevaluate or remove the belief that my car is red if that was somehow part of your Ferrari belief.
I see.
But the real difficulty with contraction is that there are usually many different ways to undo a belief while trying to retain as much of the original, still valid belief set as possible. There's often no single obvious choice.
That makes perfect sense. So it's not just add everything new,
Yeah.
but a carefully choreographed dance of adding and removing to keep things consistent. And this choreographed dance really comes into play with the third and most significant operation, revision, right? K plus Ni. This is the big one because it's about adding new, potentially conflicting information while maintaining overall consistency.
Absolutely. Revision is the primary method for truly updating a belief set when new information might contradict existing beliefs. It's formally defined using what's called the Levi identity.
Okay, the Levi identity. What's the core idea there?
Well, here's where it offers a profound conceptual leap. It tells us that genuinely changing your mind isn't just about passively adding new facts. It's a very active two-step process. First, you must consciously unlearn or prune out the old conflicting beliefs. You make space, in a sense.
So contract first.
Right, you contract by the negation of the new information to remove anything that conflicts. Only then can you consistently integrate the new information through expansion.
Okay, let's unpack this. So it's not just add everything new, but a carefully choreographed dance of first removing the contradiction, then adding the new thing.
Exactly. Think of it as clearing out clutter and broken furniture before bringing in new pieces that truly fit.
I love that analogy. It's not just about what you gain, but what you're willing to let go of. And because, as you mentioned, there isn't one single obvious way to perform this dance of contraction or revision.
Right. There are choices to be made.
That's why the AGM approach introduces these rationality postulates. They're like a set of rules of the road to guide the process, aiming for minimal change and logical soundness, right?
That's it. These postulates are like the fundamental principles of logical belief change. They ensure that whatever specific method you use for contraction or revision, the outcome adheres to certain logical and epistemic rules.
Like what kind of rules?
Like ensuring your revised belief set is still logically sound, remains consistent, and crucially, that the new information you intended to accept has indeed been accepted. They give us a benchmark for what a rational system should do.
So on one hand, we have these formal operations and postulates trying to define how beliefs should change in an ideal system. Very logical. But then we bump up against a fundamental intellectual rivalry in epistemology.
A real philosophical debate.
Two prominent theoretical approaches to how beliefs ought to be managed, which often seem to give conflicting advice, especially when we look at human behavior. Let's talk about the foundations theory.
Okay. The core principle of the foundations theory is that beliefs are justified only if they possess a satisfactory justification or reason. Imagine building a house.
Right, you mentioned this, foundational stones.
Exactly. Some beliefs are like the foundational stones. They're considered self-justifying. Other beliefs are derived from them, like the walls and roof built upon those foundations.
Makes sense, hierarchical.
So if the justification for a belief is lost or successfully undermined, that belief must be abandoned. This can trigger a kind of intellectual domino effect, a chain reaction.
Like in those AI systems you mentioned.
Yeah, for instance, in some artificial intelligence systems, like John Doyle's reason maintenance system, if a foundational belief is removed, all other beliefs whose justifications explicitly depended on it also fall away.
Wow.
This view effectively requires an agent to constantly keep track of the reasons or pedigrees behind every single one of their beliefs. It's quite demanding.
That sounds incredibly rigorous, almost like you need a meticulously detailed mental blueprint of every justification for every belief you hold. Now, how does that compare to the coherence theory?
The coherence theory takes a very different stance. Its core principle is that beliefs are justified just as they are, unless there's a special reason to doubt them. Justification here is holistic.
Holistic.
Meaning beliefs are seen as mutually supporting each other within a vast, interconnected network, almost like a spider's web where every strand relies on others.
Oh, okay. Not a pyramid, but a web.
Exactly. Revisions are allowed only to the extent that they yield sufficient increases in overall coherence. This could mean making the belief system more consistent, better logically organized, or simply more elegant and less ad hoc.
And there's still a conservatism element.
Yes, all of this must also adhere to a principle of minimizing change, which is a form of conservatism. Keep the web as intact as possible.
What's fascinating here is how it emphasizes the interwoven web of belief, rather than a rigid hierarchical tree of justification. It sounds like a much more organic, flowing way of thinking about beliefs, maybe more akin to how our brains seem to operate.
It truly is. A key distinction is that, unlike the foundations theory, it denies strict asymmetrical justification dependencies. All beliefs are, in a sense, equally fundamental within the coherent whole.
So everything supports everything else.
In a way, yes. Their justification comes from how well they fit with the entire system, not from a single root or origin. It's about the overall harmony, the coherence of the whole picture.
And this brings up a really interesting observation from our sources. Our intuition about what we ought to do often aligns with the foundations theory, that rigorous justification tracking approach.
Right, it feels like the logical way.
Yet human behavior often seems to follow the coherence theory. There's a stark gap between the ideal and the reality. Can you give us an example, maybe that Karen example from the note?
Certainly. Let's imagine Karen takes an aptitude test. She's told she has high aptitude for science and music, but low for history and philosophy.
Okay.
Now, this doesn't perfectly match her previous grades. She actually did very well in history and maybe poorly in music.
So a conflict.
Right. After processing this new, surprising information, she concludes that her history course must have just been really easy, and she probably didn't work hard enough in music. Based on this, she decides to pursue more music studies and maybe not take any more history.
So she adjusted her beliefs about her past experiences to fit the new test results.
Exactly. Now, intuitively, her belief that the history course was easy depends on her belief about her history aptitude, which, in turn, depends on her test score. This kind of hierarchical dependency aligns perfectly with the foundations theory. One belief rests upon another.
So, if her test score report turns out to be wrong, say they got her name confused with someone else's, what should Karen do according to these theories?
Okay, according to the foundations theory, if the foundational belief, the test score report, is debunked, all the derived beliefs must also be abandoned. The justification is gone.
So she should ditch the ideas about her aptitude, the easy history course, her music effort, everything derived from the bad score.
Exactly. The justifications are gone, so the beliefs must go. However, the coherence theory doesn't automatically yield the same advice.
Why not?
Well, while the initial report's explanation for her beliefs is lost, Karen's inferred beliefs about her aptitudes and course experiences might still be highly coherent with each other and with many other things she now believes. They fit together nicely in her web.
So even without the original trigger, the new structure makes sense on its own.
Potentially, yes. If abandoning all these now interconnected beliefs would be too costly in terms of minimizing change, if it would tear too big a hole in her web, the coherence theory might advise her to retain them, seeking to maintain overall coherence with minimal disruption.
And this is where that discrepancy between is and ought becomes really stark, isn't it? Our common sense screams that Karen ought to abandon those beliefs, aligning with the foundations theory. It feels wrong to keep them.
It does.
But in reality, people, much like our hypothetical Karen, often do keep those new beliefs, even after the original evidence for them is discredited. This phenomenon is called belief perseverance.
Yes, the psychological literature on belief perseverance, often observed in studies where participants are debriefed after experimental deception, shows just how incredibly difficult it is to eliminate erroneous beliefs once they've taken root.
So we just stick with them.
It's not necessarily that people are actively struggling to let go of beliefs they know are discredited. It's often that they simply don't perceive them as discredited anymore. Their minds find new connections, new reasons, new internal justifications within their existing belief network.
The web reconfigures itself to support the belief, even if the original support is gone.
Exactly. The coherence theory would kind of approve of this, but the foundations theory wouldn't. They've integrated it into their mental web, and pulling one strand doesn't always unravel the whole thing.
That real-world tension between theoretical ideals and human practice is absolutely fascinating. Now, let's pivot back to the formal models for a moment, because there's a cutting-edge approach that aims to bridge some of these gaps, especially when beliefs are revised not just once, but over and over again. This is a model called bounded revision.
Yes, bounded revision is a truly ingenious formal model of belief change. What makes it distinct is its two-dimensional nature, almost like it has two levers you can pull.
Two levers. How so?
Unlike earlier models that take a single input, bounded revision functions take two arguments. An input sentence, we call it A, that you want to accept, and a reference sentence that acts as a kind of bound or constraint for how strongly that is accepted.
So it's not just accept this new piece of information, but accept this new information in relation to this other existing belief or context. What's the purpose of adding that extra layer of complexity?
Exactly. It effectively fills the space between conservative revision and moderate revision, offering much more nuanced control. It provides a way to specify the extent or degree to which new information is accepted.
Without needing numbers, like degrees of belief.
Right, without needing to assign specific numerical degrees of belief, which can be really hard to come by in real-world scenarios. Think of it as a dial you can turn rather than just an on-off switch.
Okay, a dial, like that.
And crucially, it's an advancement on earlier models, and it satisfies what are called the Darwiche-Pearl postulates for iterated belief change.
Iterated belief change, meaning like belief change over time, step by step.
Precisely. What that really means is that it behaves consistently and predictably when you're updating your beliefs sequentially over many, many steps. It ensures your belief system doesn't lose its internal map as new information keeps flowing in. It maintains a kind of logical order.
So the reference sentence isn't just another piece of information. It's a measure of how firmly this new input should become entrenched.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, accept with a strength that at least equals that of dull. Or more vividly, perhaps, accept as long as bowl holds along with and just a little more. So is like a benchmark for its new level of certainty.
Precisely. You can think of as helping to delineate a sphere of plausible situations. Imagine your beliefs are organized like targets, with your most firmly held, truest beliefs at the bullseye. As you move outward, beliefs become less certain.
Okay, like rings of plausibility?
Yeah. The reference sentence in bounded revision helps us decide how deep into that target the new information should penetrate, how strongly it should be integrated into your core understanding. The more that Anna aligns with or supports Anna in various plausible scenarios, the firmer Anna gets accepted after the revision.
And this model can actually capture the two extremes of revision we mentioned earlier as special cases, right? The too timid and too radical approaches.
Yes, it's quite elegant in its flexibility. If you set to an extremal value, like a logical falsity or the negation of the input, you get conservative revision, sometimes called natural revision.
Okay, so that's the timid end.
Right. Here, the new evidence is accepted, but it's given the lowest possible entrenchment or certainty. It means Anna is easily discarded if a contradiction arises later. Some see this as too conservative, as it doesn't integrate the new information very strongly. It's like you're accepting it, but with a big mental question mark.
And the other extreme, where you accept it super firmly.
That's moderate revision, sometimes called lexicographic revision. This occurs when A is a logical truth, or even the input itself. In this case, the new information is accepted very firmly.
Out firmly.
It's like a most recent is best approach. Any scenario where Oni's is true instantly becomes more plausible than any where Oni is false. This can be too radical because it gives so much immediate weight to the newest information that it might disregard important prior distinctions or the nuanced structure of your existing beliefs. It's a quick, almost automatic overwrite.
So the real strength of bounded revision is that it offers a wealth of options just in between these two extremes. It gives you flexibility.
Exactly. It provides a fine-grained flexibility in how strongly new information is integrated into a belief system. It's like having a dimmer switch instead of just an on-off.
I like that. A dimmer switch for belief strength.
And formally, it not only satisfies the original AGM postulates for one-step revision, but, crucially, also the Darwiche-Pearl postulates for iterated belief change. These postulates are vital because they ensure a consistent and predictable behavior.
Right, keeping the order straight over time.
Exactly. Maintaining the relative plausibility of different scenarios during sequential revisions. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this means a more robust and predictable way for AI systems, or even for us to conceptualize how we continuously update beliefs without messing up the foundational distinctions or forgetting the relative certainty we had from previous revisions. It allows for a more stable and reliable learning process over time.
And it does this by operating on two primary formal representations of belief states. Systems of spheres and epistemic entrenchment relations, which you said are equivalent in quite a strong sense. Can you briefly explain what those are in simple terms?
Yes. Think of systems of spheres as that target analogy again. Concentric circles representing different levels of plausibility, with the innermost circle being the most plausible worlds or scenarios.
Okay, the bullseye is most plausible.
Right. Epistemic entrenchment relations, on the other hand, are like a ranked list of your beliefs. They indicate which ones are most deeply held and would be the last to be given up in a revision.
Your core beliefs.
Exactly. Versus those that are less entrenched and would be sacrificed first. The fact that these two models are formally equivalent suggests a deep and robust underlying structure for belief states that bounded revision can lead.
And it makes things finer grained.
Interestingly, yes. Unlike some other operations, bounded revision tends to increase the number of distinctions, making plausibility distinctions finer, which can be very valuable for a nuanced understanding of reality. It's like gaining more shades of gray instead of just black and white.
That formal rigor gives us a lot to think about for building rational systems, both in AI and maybe for ourselves. But let's bring it back to human behavior, because the concept of conservatism is a huge and very robust finding in human judgment. What exactly is it when we talk about human cognition?
Well, in cognitive psychology, conservatism refers to a systematic tendency for people to revise their beliefs less than what normative models, like Bayes' theorem, would mathematically predict.
Less than they should, according to the math.
Pretty much. Essentially, when presented with new evidence, people underweigh that new information and overweigh their existing belief. It's a kind of built-in inertia in our thinking, a resistance to change that isn't quite explained by traditional logic.
And this isn't a new idea, is it? It's been observed for a long, long time.
Oh no, it's a very consistent experimental finding that has puzzled and sparked intense debate among researchers for almost half a century. A classic experimental paradigm known as the book bag and poker chip task beautifully illustrates this.
The poker chip task, right? Tell us about that.
Okay. In these experiments, participants are typically shown two book bags, maybe metaphorical ones, each containing a different known distribution of colored chips. For instance, bag A might have 60% red and 40% blue, while bag B has 40% red and 60% blue.
Okay, known probabilities.
Right. One bag is chosen randomly, hidden from the participant, and chips are drawn sequentially, one by one, with the participant seeing each draw.
So the task for the participant is to figure out which bag the chips are coming from, updating their belief with each new chip drawn.
Exactly.
If they see, say, 5 red chips in a row, they should become increasingly confident it's the red bag, bag A in your example.
Precisely. Bayes' theorem provides the mathematical blueprint for how a perfectly rational agent should update their beliefs in this scenario, given the diagnosticity of each chip. It tells you exactly how much your confidence should shift with each new piece of evidence.
But that's not what happens.
Well, the dominant finding, observed repeatedly, is that participants consistently revise their beliefs more slowly, and to a lesser extent, than Bayes' theorem predicts. Their confidence shifts are less dramatic, more sluggish than the evidence objectively warrants. They don't move their estimates as much as the math says they should.
And the real-world impact of this is pretty significant, right? It helps us understand why it's so difficult for people to change their views, values, and beliefs on a whole range of topics.
Absolutely. From deeply held political stances to adopting new scientific consensus, or even just letting go of outdated personal assumptions, it explains the stickiness of our mental models.
So, for decades, researchers have been trying to figure out why humans exhibit this conservatism. The initial explanations often located the fault with the participant, right? Implying some kind of cognitive flaw. What were some of those early ideas?
Yeah, the traditional explanations typically focused on human cognitive shortcomings. One idea was misaggregation. People simply miscalculate or incorrectly combine how new evidence should interact with their existing beliefs. Basically, bad at math.
Okay.
Another was misperception. Individuals might inaccurately assess the true diagnostic value of the evidence itself. They don't quite grasp how informative a particular chip draw, for example, truly is.
They don't see how strong the evidence is.
Right. And a very common one was anchoring. The idea that people anchor themselves to their initial beliefs and are then unwilling or unable to incorporate new evidence sufficiently to move far away from that initial assessment. It's like they set their initial position and then just can't budge far enough.
This is where it gets really interesting, because these explanations all seem to suggest a fundamental irrationality on the part of the human mind.
Right.
Are we just bad at math, or are we simply stubborn by nature?
That's precisely the point of contention, and it's a critical turning point in this research, because an alternative class of explanations began to emerge that shifted the blame, if you like, from the participant to the experimental setting itself.
Maybe the experiment was the problem.
Exactly. These suggested that conservatism might simply be an experimental artifact, Edwards himself, way back in 1968, hinted that the complex numerical tasks often involved in these experiments could simply confuse participants, leading to performance errors.
Just too hard or too weird.
Yeah. Later, researchers like Slovic and Lichtenstein added that people generally struggle with explicit numerical probabilities, which aren't common in daily life, and they also tend to avoid using the extreme ends of response scales. So if you force them into an unnatural mathematical task, they might not perform rationally simply because the task itself is ill-suited.
So it might not be that we're inherently irrational, but that the experiments themselves were set up in a way that made it hard for us to appear rational. That makes a lot of sense, but there's an even more crucial, novel explanation that goes deeper into this, related to the pragmatics of experiments.
This is truly a critical insight, and it's a potential game changer. The core idea is that participants and experimenters may not actually share the same normative model of the experimental task.
They're not on the same page about what the task means.
Kind of. Participants, being human, make conversational implicatures, a concept from philosopher Paul Grice. They infer more about the experiment from the context and subtle cues than is literally stated in the instruction.
Okay, reading between the lines.
Exactly. And the key point here is that participants might not implicitly treat the information they receive, like the chip draws, as coming from a fully reliable source. They might be skeptical of the setup or the experimenter.
And this has profound implications, because Bayesian theory itself mathematically dictates that less reliable evidence should lead to more conservative belief revision.
Precisely.
So the observed conservatism might not be an error at all, but a normatively appropriate response to perceived, even as implicit, unreliability. That's a radical reframe.
It absolutely is. And there's significant empirical support for this participant skepticism. Researchers like Kelman, as early as 1967, suggested that the frequent use of deception in social psychology experiments could create suspicious participants who simply don't fully trust the experimenter.
Right, if you think you might be tricked.
You'll be cautious. Other studies found that prior exposure to experimental manipulations could lead to negative subject responses and increased scrutiny of messages. So people come into these situations with a natural, maybe even healthy, cautious skepticism.
So people become wary, even if unconsciously, and that wariness is perfectly rational given the context of being in an experiment.
Exactly. McKinsey and colleagues in 2004 took this a step further. They explicitly modeled participant skepticism by introducing a believability parameter into their models.
How much do I believe this factor?
Pretty much. They found that seemingly irrational behavior from human participants became entirely in keeping with this modified normative model and hence rational when this skepticism was accounted for. As they provocatively put it, maybe the only irrational thing to do in any experiment is to fully believe anything the experimenter tells you.
Wow, that's a powerful statement about human sense-making.
It really is.
That truly challenges our assumptions. So how do they apply this idea to the classic book bag and poker chip paradigm? How do they test if this rational skepticism could actually explain the observed conservatism we've seen for decades?
Okay, so they used a sophisticated hierarchical Bayesian model, which is a way of building mathematical models that incorporate layers of uncertainty.
Layers of uncertainty, like what?
Imagine you're trying to figure out if your friend is telling you the truth about something they saw. A simple model just looks at their words directly. A hierarchical Bayesian model would also factor in how much you trust your friend generally, or how likely they are to be mistaken or even kidding. It adds layers of believability to the information itself, making your judgment much more nuanced.
Okay, got it.
So in the book bag experiment, their model explicitly captured that what the participant receives is a report of evidence, a rep, from a partially reliable source, the experimenter or the setup, not the evidence E directly.
So there's a potential filter between the reality, the chip, and what you're told, the report.
Exactly. Their mathematical equation for this model elegantly combined the true diagnosticity of the evidence, like a red chip coming from the red bag, with the hit and false positive rates of the reporting source. Basically, how likely the source is to report correctly.
And the key finding.
Critically, partial reliability necessarily reduces the overall diagnosticity or informativeness of the evidence that the participant actually receives. If you don't fully trust the source, the information itself becomes less powerful.
And what were the simulation results? Did this sophisticated model, incorporating perceived unreliability, actually replicate the observed human conservatism?
Yes, it did, remarkably well. This model successfully replicates key findings of conservatism experiments. It showed that conservatism increases as the true diagnostic value of a single chip increases. For instance, for bags with 70% dominant chips versus 60%.
Which is what humans do.
Exactly. And crucially, the accuracy ratios, a common measure in conservatism, remained constant across trials, perfectly aligning with the empirical human data. It wasn't just a general match, it replicated the specific patterns of human behavior.
This raises an incredibly important question. If people are reacting rationally to perceived unreliability in an experimental setting, what does that imply for how we interpret any experimental data or even real-world information where sources are rarely, if ever, perfectly reliable?
It's huge.
It implies that what we thought was a cognitive bias might actually be a rational, adaptive response to the messy, uncertain world of information sources.
It absolutely does. The larger, profound conclusion here is that conservatism in experimental settings is often a rational response to information from a source perceived as less than perfectly reliable. It's described not as active distrust, but as a mundane default response to the experimental setting, an implicit understanding that you're in an experiment, and therefore the conditions might not be as pristine or the source as infallible as explicitly asserted.
It's a default level of caution.
Right. This fundamentally reframes our understanding of human rationality in belief revision, suggesting our minds are far more sophisticated in their skepticism than we previously thought.
That reframe on human conservatism is incredibly thought-provoking. Okay, so if humans are naturally conservative in their belief revision, maybe for good reasons, what are the broader epistemological implications? Is this a good thing or a bad thing from the perspective of actually acquiring true beliefs? Let's dig into doxastic conservatism.
Right. Doxastic conservatism refers to that specific tendency to stick to one's beliefs or values, even when confronted with new, challenging evidence. It's a core strategy, a default setting, you might say, in how we form and maintain our beliefs.
Sticking to your guns.
Pretty much. Now, this concept stands in stark contrast to another prominent idea in philosophy, verificationism.
Okay, so conservatism versus verificationism. How do these two core strategies for managing beliefs differ?
Conservatism, often famously attributed to philosopher W.V.O. Quine, adheres to what's called the maxim of minimum mutilation.
Minimum mutilation. Sounds dramatic.
It just means agents strive to preserve their previous beliefs and give up as few of their beliefs as logically possible when revising. It's about minimizing change to the existing belief system, keeping things familiar and stable. Change as little as possible.
Okay, and verificationism.
Verificationism, on the other hand, embodies the maxim of maximum warrant. Here, agents strive to acquire internally well-justified beliefs, even if it means sacrificing a significant number of their previously held beliefs.
So, truth over stability.
You could say that. It prioritizes getting to the truth and having solid reasons, no matter the cost to existing knowledge. Go where the evidence leads, even if it requires big changes.
And it sounds like there's an inherent tension, a real tug of war between these two maxims.
Definitely.
You can either hold on to beliefs, perhaps out of comfort or stability, even when new evidence makes them less plausible.
That's conservatism.
Or you can be willing to discard many beliefs to achieve a better justified, perhaps truer position.
That's verificationism. It's a choice between stability and accuracy, in a sense.
Is there a real-world example of this clash?
Yes, a powerful real-world case study illustrating this tension is the 19th century Great Devonian Controversy, beautifully documented by historian of science Martin Redwick.
The Devonian controversy, what was that about?
This was a heated scientific debate concerning the geological mapping of Devonshire in England. How to classify the rock layers and fossils found there. Roderick Murchison, a key figure, was portrayed as doxastically more conservative.
Okay, Murchison was the conservative.
Right. He clung to his broad, sweeping hypotheses about geological periods, even as mounting counterarguments and new fossil evidence made his position less and less plausible. He prioritized preserving his grand theory.
And who was his intellectual counterpart in this debate?
That would be Adam Sedgwick. He was much more verificationist. When faced with recalcitrant evidence that just didn't fit his initial ideas, he was willing to temporarily suspend judgment, even if it meant being uncertain for a time.
He pumped the brakes.
Yeah. He prioritized having well-justified beliefs, even if it meant admitting his previous understanding was flawed. Their beliefs only converged much later after significant changes in the underlying scientific theories.
Wow. So it really affected the science.
It vividly illustrates the real-world impact of these differing epistemic strategies on the actual progress of science. One was holding firm, the other was seeking deeper truth, and it took time for the evidence to pull them together.
While our deep dive specifically focuses on content conservatism, this idea of how much old belief content we hold on to, it's worth noting that the concept of conservatism in belief isn't just one thing, right?
Correct. There are other forms, like basic conservatism, which is simply the idea that we revise existing beliefs rather than starting from scratch every time. That's pretty fundamental.
We don't reboot our brains every morning.
Hopefully not. Or there's inferential conservatism, sometimes called deductivism, where new beliefs must be deductively entailed by what we already know. But yeah, for today, we're really probing the truth-tracking ability of this specific kind of content conservatism.
Right. Does holding on to your old beliefs, even when challenged, ultimately help you get to the truth? Or hinder you? That's the question. Hashtag 3.2. Assessing conservatism's veritistic merit through simulation.
So to objectively assess how well different degrees of conservatism actually help agents acquire true beliefs, what philosophers call veritistic merit, researchers used a methodology based on a bounded rationality framework.
Bounded rationality, meaning they aren't perfectly rational like real people.
Sort of. It means they have computational limits. The goal was to quantify the truth-tracking ability of these different belief revision strategies using simulations.
How was this all set up in their simulation model? Sounds complex.
It was quite clever. Imagine agents, not as complex humans, but as simple logical entities operating within a finite set of possible facts and sentences and a fixed inferential net that defines how these facts logically connect.
Okay, a mini world of facts and rules.
Exactly. An agent's beliefs were represented as a position. Think of it as their current stance or their yes or no answer to a bunch of statements like the sky is blue or dogs are friendly. This position had to be consistent and logically coherent according to the rules.
Makes sense. And how did they measure verificationism versus conservatism?
They developed objective measures. For verificationism, they had degree of justification, DOSH, which objectively quantified how well supported a position was by the incoming evidence. Higher DOSH means better justified.
Okay. And for conservatism?
For conservatism, they had content preservation, CPR, which simply measured how much of an agent's old set of beliefs they managed to keep after new information came in. Higher CPR means more conservative.
So, when new evidence came in, how did the agents decide what to keep and what to change? Based on DOJ and CPR.
Exactly. When new evidence conflicted with their current position, agents chose a new position that maximized a combination of their content preservation, CPR, and degree of justification, DOJ. This is where the crucial conservatism parameter came in.
Alpha. The dial again?
Yeah, you can think of a dollar as a dial or a slider ranging from 0 to 1. A higher off meant the agent gave more weight to content preservation, CPR, making them more conservative. They preferred to keep their old beliefs.
And a lower alpha.
A lower off gave more weight to justification, DOJ, making them more verificationist. They prioritized getting to the truth, even if it meant radical change.
And they ran this a lot.
Oh, yeah. They ran multi-agent simulations with 20 agents, each starting with random coherent belief states across 1,000 different logical networks, these inferential nets. These agents received a gradual stream of correct evidence over time. This massive scale helped to wash out any dependencies on initial conditions and see the long-term patterns.
That's a huge data set to analyze. How did they visualize these complex results, especially in terms of truth? Did they just count true beliefs?
They used a really novel method called the truth content space. Instead of just a single number to say how true an agent's beliefs were, they plotted each agent's belief state in a two-dimensional space, like a scorecard.
2 dimensions. What were the axes?
The x-axis represented content size, which is simply the number of truth value assignments a position makes, essentially how many beliefs an agent holds. More beliefs means further right on the x-axis.
Okay, quantity of belief. And the y-axis?
The y-axis was net truth content, which is the difference between the number of correct and incorrect truth value assignments. So if you held 10 true beliefs and 2 false ones, your net truth content would be 8. Higher up means more net truth.
So it's not just how many true beliefs, but the balance of true versus false.
Exactly. This space forms a kind of triangle, allowing for a nuanced assessment. It shows everything from someone who believes very little, low content, near the origin, to someone who holds many beliefs, high content far right, with varying ratios of true to false, up and down on the y-axis. Different isolines within this space can represent states of equal truth, falsity, or truth ratio, giving a much richer picture than just one number.
And what were the surprising findings when they looked at this from an individual agent's perspective? Did being more conservative, high alpha, lead to more truth or less?
Well, this is where it got tricky. From an individual agent's perspective, the veritistic comparison yielded highly ambivalent results,
Ambivalent, meaning
meaning neither pure conservatism nor pure verificationism was a clear universal winner across all aspects. For example, the median net truth content across all simulations did not depend on the degree of conservatism. So, on average, a conservative agent didn't end up with more net truth than a verificationist one.
so being stubborn didn't necessarily make you more right or wrong on average.
On average, for net truth, no. However, there was a crucial nuance. For agents whose initial beliefs were already more true, becoming more conservative, a higher right, increased their net truth content. It helped them stay on the right path.
Okay, if you start out right, conservatism helps you stay right.
Exactly. Conversely, for agents whose initial beliefs were less true to begin with, a high right reduced their net truth content. It locked them into their errors.
Ouch. So conservatism can amplify your starting point, for better or worse.
Precisely.
So it's not a universal benefit. It depends on where you start. What about the sheer number of true beliefs versus false beliefs? Did conservatism affect that?
This is a really key insight, and it highlights a profound trade-off. Increasing conservatism drastically raises the number of false beliefs across the entire spectrum of positions.
More conservative means more wrong beliefs.
Yes, you end up with more wrong ideas simply because you're holding on to more beliefs overall, including the mistaken ones. Yet at the same time, more conservative agents also tend to possess more true beliefs overall.
Wait, how can that be? More false beliefs and more true beliefs.
Because they just hold more beliefs, period. This reveals the trade-off. If you hold more beliefs in general, higher content size, you simply create more opportunities for both truth and error. It's a numbers game.
Ah, I see. So higher I, more conservatism, consistently led to increased content size agents held more beliefs. But it also consistently resulted in a reduced truth ratio, meaning a lower percentage of their total beliefs were true.
Exactly. More beliefs overall, but a lower hit rate, you could say.
So since an individual agent doesn't actually know their own initial net truth content, they don't know how much truth they start with, the choice of conservatism level seems to be a matter of preference, or maybe error aversion.
Precisely.
It's like, do you prefer to hold fewer beliefs, but have a higher percentage of them be true and accurate, verificationist? Or do you prefer to hold many beliefs, accepting that a larger number of them might in fact be false, conservative? It's a personal risk assessment about what kind of errors you mind more.
Exactly. For an isolated agent, it boils down to what kind of errors you're more comfortable with, or what kind of knowledge state you prefer, sparse but accurate, or broad but potentially flawed.
That ambiguity at the individual level is truly fascinating. It's a personal choice almost. But what happens when we shift our focus from a single agent grappling with truth to an entire community of epistemic agents trying to understand the world together? Does conservatism still appear as a mere matter of individual preference then?
This is where the picture changes dramatically, and it's one of the most compelling findings from these simulations. The researchers proposed a hypothetical collective strategy, which they called Strategy S.
Strategy S. What does it entail?
Okay, here's how it works. After sufficient evidence has been accumulated and agents have, individually and in isolation, revised their beliefs accordingly, every agent simply adopts the position of that agent in the community who holds the most beliefs.
So find the person who knows the most stuff and copy them.
Essentially, yes. But the crucial point here is that agents can see each other's content size, meaning how many beliefs someone holds, but they cannot see net truth content. They don't know which of those beliefs are true or false. They're basically saying, let's all just follow the agent with the biggest belief set.
Okay, a plausible social learning strategy. What was the key result of applying this social strategy across different communities, some conservative, some verificationist?
The results were striking. For communities composed of verificationist agents, those with a low I-dial, who individually prioritize strong justification and truth-applying strategy, S, led all agents, on average, to end up in veritistically extremely valuable positions.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning they converge towards the highly desirable states in the upper right part of the truth content space, signifying both a high number of true beliefs and high content overall. In essence, the community successfully leveraged the most knowledgeable agent to pull everyone towards a state of widespread, high-quality knowledge.
That's a powerful outcome for the verificationist communities. What about communities of highly conservative agents? Did copying the person with the most beliefs work for them?
In contrast, for communities of highly conservative agents, those with a high adile who individually prioritize keeping their old belief strategy S was largely ineffective.
Ineffective how?
The agent with the maximum number of beliefs in their community could be anywhere on their opinion frontier, meaning they were equally likely to have above or below average net truth content. Simply adopting the beliefs of the person who held the most beliefs didn't guarantee a move towards truth for the group.
So in a conservative community, the person who believes the most isn't necessarily the person who believes the most truly.
Exactly. Their large belief set could be riddled with errors they've held onto. Copying them might not help the group get closer to the truth at all.
So what does this all mean? It sounds like individually you might have your own preference for how much you change your mind. But for a group seeking truth for a society, one approach clearly pulls ahead.
It's a strong argument for verificationism and against doxastic conservatism from a social epistemology perspective. The simulation suggests that individual caution in belief formation collectively pays off.
How so?
In a verificationist community, where individuals are constantly pruning, revising, and seeking justification, the pursuit of truth by individuals ends up creating a collective pool where the person who holds the most beliefs is also likely to hold the most true beliefs. This makes them a remarkably reliable go-to source for the whole group when using strategy S.
So the individual striving for accuracy makes the whole group smarter.
It seems so. This valuable social strategy for collective knowledge just doesn't emerge, or at least not reliably, in a highly conservative community. It suggests that a society of cautious truth seekers might collectively be far more successful at gaining knowledge than one of steadfast traditionalists, at least under this model.
This deep dive has covered a tremendous amount of ground, from the abstract formal models of how beliefs change to the very human tendency towards conservatism and its surprising implications for individual and collective truth-seeking. Let's talk about the ongoing debate, especially bridging the divide between these seemingly antithetical theories like the foundations approach and the coherence approach.
Wow.
Are they really so different?
Well, John Doyle offers a compelling perspective here, arguing for the great and fundamental similarities between these two approaches, despite their apparent differences.
Similarities like what?
Both approaches, at their core, are trying to identify logical and inferential relationships among beliefs. They primarily differ in how these relations are represented, whether as explicit reasons, like a dependency graph,
The foundation's view.
right, or as entrenchment orderings, like a ranked list of belief importance.
The coherence view.
Exactly. One is like drawing a detailed family tree of your beliefs. The other is like listing them in order of importance or stubbornness. But both are trying to capture structure.
And practically speaking, both have to make compromises in the real world, right? Because perfect consistency and logical closure are just too demanding for, say, an AI.
Absolutely. For either approach to be computationally feasible for real-world applications, think about building an AI that constantly learns both, must ultimately abandon strict requirements of full logical consistency and full deductive closure. Those are immensely expensive and often impossible to maintain in dynamic environments.
And they're flexible, not rigidly one thing or the other.
Right. Both also allow for flexibility in how reasons or entrenchment orderings are used. Neither strictly distinguishes fundamental from derived beliefs in an immutable way. They can adapt to the current purpose of reasoning.
So from an AI perspective, which one wins out in practice for building intelligent systems? Is one more practical?
Well, from an artificial intelligence standpoint, reason maintenance systems which represent the foundation's approach by explicitly tracking justifications.
The why behind the belief.
Exactly. They are argued to be the most practical means of mechanizing coherence approaches. This is because they naturally provide the structure needed for explanations and updates. If an AI needs to tell you why it believes something or how it changed its mind, explicit reasons are very helpful.
That makes sense for transparency.
Furthermore, it's suggested that reasons, as in the foundation's approach, might be more convenient for human users to input or specify than trying to define complete, complex entrenchment orderings in the coherence approach, especially when beliefs have multiple or conflicting justifications.
It's easier to list reasons than rank your entire belief system.
Probably, yes. This points towards the potential value of mixed schemes in AI systems that intelligently combine elements from both approaches to get the best of both worlds, practicality and coherence. Hashtag tag 4.2, practical utility and real-world impact.
So beyond the academic debate and the fascinating simulations, what's the real-world utility of understanding belief revision and cognitive conservatism? How does this knowledge actually help us navigate our lives, design better products, or even manage teams?
Oh, it's huge. The psychological findings on cognitive conservatism offer crucial, tangible insights into why individuals and groups resist changing their minds on a wide range of issues, from accepting scientific consensus like climate change, to embracing new technologies, to shifting deeply ingrained political beliefs or personal values.
Explains the pushback.
Exactly. It explains the inherent inertia, the heavy lift we face when trying to introduce new ideas or challenge existing ones. It's not just stubbornness, it's a fundamental operating principle of the human mind, potentially even a rational one, as we discussed.
And how does this translate into fields like product management or even people management? Can you give some concrete examples?
Absolutely. In content and marketing, acknowledging belief inertia means any communication, whether it's an advertisement, a product description, or public relations, should be carefully reviewed to ensure it doesn't inadvertently hurt anyone by touching on the topic of their personal values, because people tend to cling fiercely to these beliefs.
Don't poke the bear of core values.
Pretty much. If your product message inadvertently clashes with a deeply held value, it will often be rejected outright, not revised. Think about how difficult it is to convince someone to switch from a brand they've trusted for decades, even if a new product is objectively better. Their loyalty is a form of conservatism.
So you're not just selling a feature, you're navigating a pre-existing belief system. You have to understand that system first.
Exactly. This leads directly to user persona development. Product teams must learn upfront all the beliefs of their users through detailed personas to tailor messaging effectively.
So personas aren't just demographics, they're belief maps.
Ideally, yes. Imagine a content writer's task being transformed. Instead of being told, write promo text for product feature X, we're the best, they get specific user insights. Our audience consists of young couples, 18-27. They're concerned about air quality, they attend Sunday worship ceremonies, and they distrust large corporations.
Wow, that's specific.
Right. That transforms generic promo text into highly relevant, targeted content that resonates because it acknowledges existing user beliefs, anticipates their conservatism, and frames the message in a way that aligns with their worldview rather than challenging it head-on.
And this isn't just about marketing. It extends to broader organizational or even sociocultural norms, which are essentially collective belief systems, right? Like company culture.
Crucially, understanding conservatism is vital for maintaining sociocultural norms, whether within a company or a wider society. Ignoring these fundamental aspects can lead to rapid and spectacular failure, even for an otherwise good application or policy.
Can you give an example?
Sure. A straightforward one. A global company switching to a very casual dress code across all its offices without considering regional differences. In some culturally sensitive regions, this could offend many people because of the sociocultural traditions they historically kept.
Because the belief in professional attire is deeply conservative there.
Exactly. The ingrained conservative adherence to professional attire, built over generations, could lead to significant backlash and employee dissatisfaction. This illustrates the real-world, tangible impact of ingrained conservative tendencies. Neglecting them has very real, costly consequences, far beyond just abstract theory. It's about respect and understanding the existing belief landscape. Hashtag 4.3, future research and implementation directions.
Okay, so where does the research go from here? What are the next big questions in belief revision and conservatism?
Well, the simulation model used in the epistemological assessment opens up many exciting avenues for future research, pushing our understanding even further. For instance, what happens if the incoming evidence stream is not perfectly accurate, but partly erroneous?
Right, the real world isn't always truthful.
Exactly. How would noisy or misleading information affect the veritistic assessment of conservatism? Would conservatism become more or less valuable then? Or what if agents begin with incomplete positions rather than complete belief positions? Does one strategy become more favorable under those conditions, perhaps when dealing with partial information or fragmented knowledge?
And what about the agents themselves? Could they change their approach to conservatism over time? Could alpha change?
That's a fascinating question. Instead of a fixed for each agent, a static degree of conservatism, what if I could change dynamically over time? Perhaps it could be a function of previous opinion trajectories or the specific argumentation strategies they encounter.
Like becoming more open-minded after being proven wrong, or more stubborn after success.
Something like that. Could such context-sensitive hybrid strategies where agents adjust their conservatism based on circumstances outperform the simpler fixed ones studied here? We could also adapt this framework to model and veritistically assess other types of conservatism.
Like the inferential kind you mentioned.
Yeah, like inferential deductivism, where new beliefs must be strictly deduced compared to more ampliative reasoning, which allows for jumps or inductive leaps. How do those fare in terms of truth tracking?
And for AI, this bridging of theory and practice continues. What's the next frontier there? Refining those mixed schemes.
Yeah, absolutely. The ongoing focus in AI research is on understanding the relative computational efficiencies of different representational schemes, which ways of organizing knowledge are faster or more robust, and exploring those mixed schemes that intelligently combine elements from both foundations and coherence approaches.
Finding the sweet spot.
Right. Ultimately, there's still a pressing need for a practical, comprehensive, general methodology telling us when to apply which operations of belief, revision, expansion, contraction, different kinds of revision applicable to both numerical and non-numerical approaches. We need smarter, more flexible ways for AI to learn and unlearn, maybe closer to how humans actually do it, warts and all. Hashtag tag 4.4, concluding significance.
So wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway? Why is understanding belief revision so important?
Ultimately, understanding belief revision from its formal logical underpinnings and the cognitive biases, or perhaps rational heuristics, that shape us, to its profound epistemological implications for truth is not merely an academic exercise. It's crucial for designing more rational and adaptable AI systems that can learn and correct themselves effectively.
And for humans.
It's vital for influencing public opinion effectively and ethically, for navigating complex social dynamics where beliefs clash, and perhaps most importantly, improving how we as individuals and as a society learn, communicate, and evolve our collective knowledge in an increasingly information-saturated world.
It helps us understand gridlock, maybe.
Yeah.
Why change is hard.
Exactly. It helps us understand why change is so hard, both for ourselves and for others, and maybe, just maybe, points towards how we might make navigating that change a little easier, a little more rational, and perhaps a little more productive. Hashtag tag outro.
So we've journeyed through the intricate, often surprising world of belief revision. We started with the abstract attempts to formally model how beliefs change those AGM operations like expansion, contraction, and revision, understanding the careful dance required to maintain logical consistency.
Right, the logical ideals.
Then we explored the age-old philosophical debate between foundations theory, with its rigid structure of justification, and coherence theory, with its interconnected web of mutual support. We saw that cutting-edge, bounded revision model offering that nuanced dimmer switch control over how strongly new information is integrated. And perhaps most surprisingly, we uncovered deep insights into why humans exhibit conservatism in their thinking. It might just be a profoundly rational response to an unreliable world, a smart way of dealing with information that might not be perfectly trustworthy.
A fascinating possibility.
And finally, we grappled with the larger philosophical and social implications of how tightly we cling to what we believe, seeing how individual caution in the pursuit of truth verificationism can collectively pay off for society as a whole in those simulations.
Yeah, these abstract theories aren't just for academics. They manifest in your daily life, affecting everything from your personal disagreements and how you process news headlines to the adoption of new technologies and the very progress of scientific understanding.
It's happening all the time.
Every time you encounter a new idea or someone tries to persuade you of something, you're engaging, consciously or unconsciously, in this complex, lifelong process of belief revision.
So the next time you find yourself digging your heels in on a belief or struggling to change someone else's mind, perhaps you're not just encountering simple stubbornness, but a deeply ingrained and sometimes even rational system of belief preservation. What does that imply for how we engage with new ideas, for how we communicate complex truths, and for how we, individually and collectively, pursue truth in a world that's just full of conflicting information?